I continue my exploration of the 36 decans of the zodiac with the third decan of Taurus, Taurus 3. Taurus is an earth sign ruled by Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, but also wealth, finances. And it's a fixed sign. It's got a fixed energy. So all the decans of Taurus are going to have something to do with financial stability, finding a ground beneath us because of that earthy energy, as well as the Venus. And they have a capacity to persevere and work hard, that slow, plodding effort of the bull, right? The bull as the symbol of Taurus. But the third decan of Taurus is quite different than the first and second decans because the planet that's responsible for it under both systems is Saturn. Saturn's a heavy planet. I'm going to unpack all of that meaning in the upcoming video and give you a couple of examples. Herman Melville, as well as Toni Morrison, had their rising signs in this decan. And we'll explore, of course, the tarot cards associated and some other ancient imagery associated with this decan. So I hope you enjoy it. Like and subscribe if you do. It helps people find the content. Saturn, the planet that rules this decan. So there are two systems we look at, the triplicity system and the Chaldean order, to see what planet rules a decan. And under both systems, it's Saturn, Saturn. Heavy, 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 dark, dark, dark. And Saturn is a beautiful planet. He can bring wisdom, but always through hard work and perseverance. Saturn is the last planet we can see with the naked eye. He's got a ring around him, so he's about boundaries, restrictions. He's the furthest planet from the sun, the warmth, right? He's really way out there, cold and dark. He has a heavy quality. As much as the sun is joyful and bright, the Saturnine energy can bring us down, make us feel the need to be responsible, bring even sometimes a little bit of fear and depressive energy. So there's a serious quality to this last decan of Taurus. Saturn also has to do with death. His symbol is the sickle. The Grim Reaper's symbol is the sickle. In fact, I'm imagining there's probably Saturn is the Grim Reaper in some way in ancient symbology, probably. And so the sickle isn't a tool for agriculture. They used it in ancient times to cut the crops. The crops died, people ate, life continued. So there's also a quality with Saturn of the life cycles, what's possible in the real world. Sometimes things have to die for other things to live. And that is built into the energy of this last decan. So, death and endings are definitely a part, and also the fear of loss, right, can be part of it. And we're going to see that in some of the imagery that comes up. The first imagery we're going to look at, though, is Agrippa's from the 3 books on occult philosophy. He describes each of the faces or decans of the zodiac there. And he says in the third face of Taurus, a man ascends in whose hand is a sickle, and he is, as it were, gathering fruit. This is a face of industry, nobleness, and strife. It confers the love of riches and instruments and the seeking after them. So there can be a quality with folks with planets in this decan where there's a certain amount of ambition. The ambition doesn't necessarily come out of greed so much as perhaps fear. And we're going to see that in the Seven of Pentacles card when we explore it, that there may be a desire to prevent inevitable loss or to try and guard against it. And so the hard work may be part of trying to gather enough money to survive, because that's always going to be part of the energy of Taurus, is around stability and security in the material world. So looking at a couple of pieces from that Agrippa quote before I go away from it. One of the things is the man's ascending, and there's a way in which an ascent can have to do with trying to go higher. There's a spiritual quality to this decan because it is associated with the number 7. The Seven of Pentacles is the tarot card. And sevens from the Kabbalah um, is associated with the Sephira of Netzach, which has to do with endurance and victory and emotional resilience and the creative force of nature. But it also has to do, the number seven can have to do with a union of the spiritual and the material. In the Kabbalistic cosmology, it represented the completion of divine creation, right? The world was created in 7 days under the Bible. And the spiritual task of people with, or of the number seven, it can challenge us to persevere through trials and tests. We really see that with this third decan, often requiring faith and introspection. So there's a quality of people with planets here. They're going to work hard to try and achieve, but they may encounter failure. And then the question is, what do you do in the face of that failure? Do you, like Job, in the book of Job in the Bible, shake your fist at God? Or do you persevere through the difficulty and adapt and find the solution that works in the moment? So, just trying to bring in the spiritual quality of the sevens, always having a longing to connect with God, a longing to bring God into the world as well. So let's look at the Seven of Pentacles. And here's where you can see some of the heaviness. You see a man, a farmer, who's got his crop there, and it looks ready to be picked, but he does not look too happy. And so there's a passiveness about how he's looking at it. And so one of the ways to look at this card is the crop is ready to be picked or nearly ready to be picked, right? But not quite. And so there's an understanding if you've known a farmer ever, right? The weather is a huge thing and fate can intervene. You can have the most beautiful crop in the world. And if there's a thunderstorm or a flood, you could lose it all. So that can be part of the energy is the fear, the Saturnine fear that can enter folks with this decan or energy in this decan. And so as a result, they may work that much harder to try and secure the ground underneath them. Or if they have a failure or a difficulty, they may persevere. And I bring in the word failure because under the Thoth deck, the name of the card is failure. And look how dark that is. Look at all that Saturnine, dark, heavy energy. And the question is, how do you look at failure, right? Failure sometimes is an opportunity to stick with something and improve or keep going, right? If you're looking at it from the standpoint of resilience and that resilient energy. It can also be a moment where you give up because you're so angry at the fact that you of your littleness, right? So this is the question of people sometimes with energy in this deck. And this is where I'm going to very quickly bring in Herman Melville, because if you know anything about Moby Dick, he wrote the book, and a lot of the theme of the book is a contrast between two characters, Captain Ahab, who's trying to catch the whale and won't give up to his own detriment, right? He sticks with it, and his ego refuses to accept the limited nature or his own limited capacity and to his own detriment. And then we have the narrator, Ishmael, who's an observer and has the capacity to adapt in the face of the struggle and saves his own life by adapting. When the ship goes down, he saves his life by holding on to the coffin that had been built by this intuitive figure, Queequeg. Now, I don't want to, in a YouTube video, get into the deep literary themes here, but you can see the difference in approach that this decan requires from us, or we may use the energy most efficiently if, when we encounter a situation where we're running up against a wall, we accept our limitations. Saturn's all about limitation, as opposed to trying to plow forward and making things worse for ourselves. So getting in line with the energy and the natural reality that sometimes we're not going to succeed and letting go will help us maintain the resilience that's necessary or that Saturn demands really, because he demands hard work over a long period of time to achieve success. And he rewards us when we stick with something. So, how is that reflected in the life of Toni Morrison? That's what I'm going to finish up with. Toni Morrison, um, you know, she faced a lot of challenges in her early life. She grew up in a working class area, and of course, systemic racism was horrific as she was growing up. It's still really bad. But despite all of those issues, she was able to pursue her education. Um, she got a master's degree that allowed her ultimately to become a writer, right, and an editor. But at the same time, she was a single working mother, right? And so she had to balance raising her children. Imagine all the hard work, the toil, the nobility in doing that. If we go back to the Agrippa image we were talking about, she would often have to write like really early mornings before she went off to work. But she dedicated herself. She stuck with it. She used that Saturnine energy to achieve, including she got the Nobel Prize for Literature, right? And one of her phrases that she said that I thought this was so fitting with Taurus 3, she said, if you surrender to the air, you can ride it. And that so fits with the can you adapt, which is what's required of people in this decan. It's the last decan of 3. So it's a mutable part of the sign. So if you're into astrology, you'll understand that means adaptation is required. Anyway, adapting to the moment, riding the air when it's there for you and achieving. And that's what she did. She found the moment to do her riding. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. Feel free if you have any questions or if this resonates with your own life, drop a comment. I love to hear from you. And I'll see you next time when we do Gemini 1. Thanks.